Our first speaker is Dr. Jacqueline Mafucci, and she's the Research Director for the Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America, another fabulous organization that I neglected to mention earlier when I was talking about my colleagues in the room, along with others, so excuse me if I've left you out. She also currently serves on the National Center for PTSD Education Advisory Board and the Department of Veteran Affairs Women's Health Create Veterans Council, as well as the National Academic Affiliations Council. And prior to being at IAVA, Dr. Mafucci spent nearly 4 years as a consultant to the Pentagon, focusing on behavioral health policy for the Army, including 2 years on the Army Suicide Prevention Task Force. I'm going to go ahead and introduce Dr. Tom Berger because I believe he'll just take the stage right afterwards. So we will welcome him after Dr. Mafucci. And he's the Executive Director of the Veterans Health Council at the Vietnam Veterans of America National Office. And as Executive Director, Dr. Berger is responsible for developing and presenting congressional testimony and position papers on veterans' benefits, healthcare, mental health, and substance abuse issues. Dr. Berger is also a veteran, having served as a Navy corpsman with the 3rd Marine Corps Division in Vietnam from 66 to 68. Please welcome Tom Berger, but that will be after Dr. Mafucci. So thank you all. It's been such a delight to be with you, and I hope to see you again at another event.
Thank you all. So I'm going to do something that I usually don't do, which is go off script a little bit. I've been really impressed by so many of the speakers here today, and I'm feeling so inspired by everyone here today. So thank you, and thank you for allowing me to be here. This is quite an honor. So a few weeks ago, IAVA, we had an offsite with all of our staff members, and as one of our icebreakers, our CEO asked us to go around the room and talk about what keeps us coming back to work every day. This is a tough space to work in. And mental health and some of the issues we tackle, very hard to keep coming back day after day. So when it got to my turn, I kind of focused in on one specific reason, but today I realized there are two. The top reason are people like Susan and Richard and Clay Hunt, like Jean and Howard Somers and Daniel, and also so many of our members who have been so inspiring to me, who have come back from mental health challenges, from suicide attempts, and are so successful and are leading our veteran community in affecting change. People like Chris Goldsmith, who spent a week on the Hill advocating for bad paper discharges and reviewing bad paper discharge so that the weakest of the veterans can also perhaps get some care from the VA. People like Sarah Paquette, who's working in the Dallas Brain Health Center. And these are all veterans who have so inspired me. I also come back every day because honestly, it shouldn't be this hard. Right? Every day I say that to myself. It shouldn't be this hard. And so I'm thrilled that we're here today, and my message today is it shouldn't be this hard. And that's where I want us to focus, and so far I think we've had a number of speakers who have focused on exactly that. So basically for the last 7 years, give or take, my focus has been on military and veteran issues with an emphasis on health. As I said, that job, it can be really hard. It can be heartbreaking at times. On the Suicide Prevention Task Force, one of my jobs was every day, as we were getting reports of new suicides, to triage them, to review those. Those stories stay with me every single day. So what I wanted to do today is really take the challenge to heart and think about what can we do now. And so I'm going to put this challenge out to everyone. I've come with 4 challenges that I think we as a group can get done by September. September being Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. So how wonderful would it be for us to be able to come together in September and say, look at what we've accomplished. And then we'll take that momentum and move from there. So first, I'd like to propose that we need a champion. We need a convening authority, We need someone to organize all of this energy and all of this momentum into something a little bit more contrived, a little bit more organized, and much more effective. Every one of us in this room has made an impact on this issue. Think of what we can do if we really united and came together and put together a plan and implemented that. I've seen, to some degree, what that looks like. I saw it in February, when many of you in this room joined IAVA, joined the VA, and joined others at the White House to see the Clay Hunt SAVE Act signed into law. That was an extremely proud moment for me for a few reasons. One, just the legislation itself. I really think that that's legislation that's going to save lives. But two, everyone in the room together. It was amazing to me to see so many veteran service organizations, mental health advocates, survivors, members of Congress, the VA, DOD, and of course the White House staff, all together celebrating this great thing that we had done. That's the momentum that we need to hold on to. That's the momentum that we need to keep and we need to use to move the conversation and, more importantly, the actions forward. And so I'd like us to leave the room today knowing who our champion is, knowing who that one individual, entity, organization who's going to keep us all on task. I've got a couple of recommendations that I'm just going to throw out, but there might be others that are more either willing or able. I see the National Action Alliance as a fantastic body who could take on this task. I think this is an expansion of the role they already play, and I'd love to see them really take the role that they've been given and own it and lead us all into the future on this issue. Maybe it's joining forces. They've already done so much with the campaign that Barbara just spoke of, and they've done so much for our military and veteran communities. So maybe they're the champion. Those are the two. They can battle it out. But those are the two I have in mind. And if there are others, then by all means, let's consider them. But let's leave the room today knowing who that is. Second, you all know, for anyone who knows me, you know I'm all about data. I'm a neuroscience nerd. So data is my mantra. And when I tackle issues, I don't want to tackle an issue thinking that I know the answer. I want to tackle an issue knowing that I know the answer. And I truly believe there's data out there that's right beyond our reach that we have yet to harness. So I want to focus on two specific data arenas. One is the CDC's National Death Index. The CDC data is years behind. We've recognized this when I was at the Suicide Prevention Task Force 4 years ago, we recognized this as a challenge. The data is lagging. And in this day and age of technology, of big data and technology-driven solutions, it's really hard for me to believe that there's not an easy solution out there. To be able to get that data a little bit closer to real time, maybe within a year might be great. Heck, real time would be amazing. And I believe that there is a tech company out there that can make that happen. And so I want to issue the challenge that we open this up to the tech companies, that we ask them to come solve this problem. How can we bring this data into the 21st century? And I challenge the CDC to ask for it. Let's open it up to the tech. I know there's a lot of bureaucracy involved, and maybe it isn't as simple as I'm making it out to be, but I really think it is. So I challenge the CDC to enlist partners in technology to start working on this. And I really do believe that if not by September, then by the end of the year, we can have a solution. And that will lead to more data, not only in just understanding the suicide rates, which is useful, but not necessarily the end-all be-all of what we need to know, but also put together a system whereby we can understand more of the health data associated with that from the civilian standpoint. And I should mention that when we talk about civilian data, we're talking about veteran data as well. So earlier, Rob Bossart, and I think there's been other mentions of the Joint Suicide Data Repository. I cannot tell you how excited I was when the Suicide Data Repository was first announced in 2011, when I was still working at the Army Suicide Prevention Task Force. This, to me, this is a gold mine of data, not just on understanding veteran suicide rates, but more importantly, again, looking at a cross-section of the epidemiological scope of veteran health. And this, to me, should be the utmost priority. And I'm not gonna lie, I've been disappointed, because this was established in 2011, and here we are in 2016. And a lot of that wealth, that gold that I know is in there, has not been harvested. And so my challenge is that with the VA, we find a solution. How can we better resource this repository? How can we pull in academic partners so that they can start churning on this data? Because this data, I'm convinced, is going to be data that is going to be necessary for us to get those data-driven solutions, to really start looking at and addressing and solving the veteran suicide challenges that we have. We need to understand the challenge before we can affect the solution. So my third recommendation, and this one I think is one very easily accomplished with the right partners, is to move the VA Suicide Prevention Office from where it is right now, which is under the Mental Health Office in VA, which is under Clinical Operations, which is far removed from the VA Secretary. Move it up in the VA hierarchy. Recognize that suicide prevention is not just about mental health. We've heard stories today of amazing men who lost their lives not just because they were struggling with mental health challenges, but they were also struggling with things like VA benefits and really the VA system overall. And we know that suicide is not just tied to mental health. We know that there are social issues that impact as well. So let's give the Suicide Prevention Office in the VA the breadth and the recognition to be able to address this holistically, to take into account the social issues as well as the mental health issues. What I envision, and what we at IAVA envision, is an office with an expanded resourcing and expanded staff, its own budget, the ability to lead on some of these data initiatives, the ability to expand on the crisis hotline, the ability to really have the visibility and the clout and the support that it needs to really do its job. And to honestly be on the same level as that of the Defense Suicide Prevention Office, which does have its own staff, and an army, if I might say, has its own budget, and really has the ear of the Secretary of Defense and has pretty good access to the Secretary. So you'll hear more from IAVA on this initiative. We're still kind of putting together the details. But to me, this seems pretty easy if we get the support, if this makes sense to people other than myself and my colleagues. So we'll be talking to others in the community and to the VA and to Congress to tackle the challenges that we need to tackle to make this happen. Finally, I want to go back to my very dear friends, Richard and Susan Selke. I spent a lot of time with them as we were advocating for the Clay Hunt SAVE Act. And a lot of our conversations, we spoke a lot about the need to emphasize community and to emphasize hope. And there are so many stories that embody this in our veteran community. The stories of community, the stories of hope, the stories of success, challenges that were overcome, individuals who are leading our community right now. And yet, it's very hard to hear those stories out in the main view. There's really no large effort, large collaborative effort from all of us to try and get these stories off. There are one-offs. There are certainly stories that are coming out, but how powerful if we were to join forces for a collective campaign that really focused on these stories of success and hope. Let's come together as one, use the resources we have to really shine a light so that we can reach the people now who are feeling lost and who are feeling hopeless, and let them know that others have walked in their shoes before, and look at where they are now. Let's try to reach them that way as a unified body rather than as individuals. I think, again, all of this, we can get done by September. I know it sounds hard, but I really don't think it is. So that's what I'm going to end with. It's really not that hard for us to work together. We just need the will to do it. Thank you.
Good morning. I want to thank the parents of Clay and Daniel for being here today, because although the individual circumstances differ, the story is the same. I'm one of the old guys that's at high risk for suicide, not only because of my age, but because of my veteran status. And so I'd like to take the time today to tell you my own personal story that happened back in the Jurassic when I returned from Vietnam, and how I got from there to here. Next slide, please. It started in Vietnam. As was said, I was a Navy corpsman with the 3rd Marine Division. My first brush with suicide was one of my recon partners taking his own life right in front of me. Fast forward to 1968, when I got out. Things were bothering me. PTSD was not recognized at that time, and there were other problems going on at the VA at that time. And so I hung out with other Vietnam veterans in what were called RAP groups, which subsequently obviously morphed into what we now know as the Veterans Readjustment Counseling Program. And I'm sorry that some of those guys that were instrumental at that time in the foundation are not here today, although there's some that remember the folks involved in that. In any case, all right, so I got help from the vet centers, or the beginnings of the vet centers, and worked stuff through. And I'll fast forward through college, through graduate school, through a couple of postdocs to the early 1990s. I had just accepted a position at another university in the Midwest. So there was some stress about getting organized, getting moved there and things, and I was going to become co-director of a research group that studied young adult high-risk behaviors. We used to refer to it as sex, drugs, and rock and roll, but suicide was one of the things that we were focused on. As I said, a new job, lots of pressure. I had just gotten some money from CDC to take a look at this project with my co-director. And then the world crashed. My father died. He was a World War II Pacific Marine. And I'd made a great deal of effort to get to know my father as a veteran before he passed. So it meant a lot. Within 3 weeks of that, the eldest of my 3 younger sisters, whom I was very, very close with, passed away because of a cerebral hemorrhage. Things began to spiral downhill with those kinds of things. Then I got handed divorce papers. So I got up one morning, and I do a ritual. I'm a veteran, you know. I do a ritual in the morning, do some exercises, have a cup of coffee, figure out the world's problems. I got up one morning with that cup of coffee, and I went into the bedroom, and I got my weapon and my ammunition out. Said, "This is just too much, Tom. You can't deal with all this crap that's coming down." But bolt of lightning hit me. I'm a mental health professional. You need to call somebody. You need to seek help. There was a VA in this town, in the city. I called, but I couldn't get an appointment for 2 weeks. So fortunately, I had private health insurance. So I checked myself in to the state's supposedly premier mental health facility, where they locked me down in a ward with people whom I can only describe. Well, let me give you the analogy. You all are aware of Arlo Guthrie's song about Alice's Restaurant and littering and who he was thrown in jail with? These people were a lot worse. In fact, what I'm about to tell you rivals some of the scenes that Nellie Bly wrote about in 10 Days in a Madhouse. They locked me down. There was no discussion about what kind of medications I was going to be given. And then on top of everything else, we operated by the infamous bell, like your kindergarten teacher had. You moved around the room when the bell rang. You smoked or get your smoking group organized when the bell rang. You ate when the bell rang. Fortunately, after a few days, with the help of a psychiatric social worker, I was able to get out, and start putting things back together. Well, the first step, since I was sort of the new kid in town, is I tried to find a mental health professional that I could work with on my PTSD issues and some of the other kinds of things, my mental health challenges. The first one I found was a psychiatrist who immediately tried to blame everything on my Jesuit education. I think he was a Dominican, okay? In any case, he gave me a drug I was supposed to take in the morning and one I was supposed to take in the evening. Well, I've since learned, the one they gave me for the evening does have suicidal ideation as one of the side effects. So, and I was beginning to feel like a zombie, I couldn't really function well. But I did. I left his care, and I did find, fortunately, a trauma psychologist who also happened to be a Gulf War vet. And so we hit it off, and we started working through stuff. I had homework to do, very similar to some of the programs like Seeking Safety and whatever, where you actually have homework out that you have to do on a weekly basis, So I did that, and more or less got back on track. Although, I have to admit that one of the things that really helped me out personally was heavy-duty exercise. I am a long-distance cycler. I know I don't look like it because I don't ride the centuries anymore, but I ride the 50-milers a couple of times a year. And that really helped me. You get those endorphins going and stuff. The old adage, about 23 minutes of exercise of hard exercise makes you feel good for 12 hours. You can do the math. All right. So here we are now, 2016. And I'm very, very happy that I had the opportunity to spend talking with Dr. Mafucci several times since we were invited to present. And it just turns out that we agreed on all 4 of those items that Jackie's already mentioned, and that is we need to designate a champion, either a person, and there's some of you in this room, if you're willing to accept that mantle, or an organization such as the National Alliance, and we have the 2 co-chairs of that today. But it's important within that framework to know that if we utilize the alliance, then one of their first tasks is going to be coordinating themselves, because there's a lot of players involved. For example, one of the work groups, I'm on the executive committee, that's why I can say this, okay? One of the work groups was involved in media. How does the media, or how should the media present stories about suicide where they're not sensationalized, okay, but you feed the public some information that they can use to make them think about the issue? Great stuff, great stuff. But you still see stories in the media in that exact fashion. So the word has not gotten out, okay? And I leave that up to the Alliance group to figure out a way how we can do it. It's a cost-effective way, how we can do it. There's several investigative journalism programs around the country. That's one suggestion I can make. All right. So those are 2 of the things that Jackie talked about. The CDC reporting thing and the IT business, we really need to push for that. We need to upgrade, okay, the data collection and especially the reporting and stuff. I mean, this stuff, we're dealing with data from 3 or 4 years ago. I also am a data freak. And it's like I have to preface reports, presentations before Congress by saying, these data are 2 years old. They're 3 years old. We need to improve that. So I call upon the tech folks in here to work with the CDC, and if we need to go down the streets here to push for increased resources, then let's do it. Jackie mentioned elevating the VA Suicide Prevention Office, and I can only say that VVA supports that 100%, increase the resources and personnel for the Joint Suicide Data Repository Office, okay? It's badly, badly needed, all right? One thing I didn't mention to Jackie in our talks, although I guess I did. She didn't mention it, but I will. And that is, use a little dark humor when you're talking about this issue, okay? Because veterans understand that stuff. In fact, there are a couple of programs around the country that they do that very thing. They show these sort of comedic situations, but the person at the center, okay, is telling you, giving you information that you need to know about depression, about post-traumatic stress disorder, that sort of thing, and there's little things, icons and stuff that you can punch on and you get all the information you need. So use some dark humor on occasion in mental health messages. And then last but not least, it was mentioned earlier this morning about recruitment of mental health professionals. What I'd like to suggest is, in addition to those efforts that have already been made, there is a VA initiative. Okay, right now it's really an initiative. It's sort of still dreamlike, but we can turn it into something real, and that's taking place in Illinois. It's the Grow Your Own program, and that is, it's a pipeline or a proposed pipeline for healthcare providers using folks who have spent their military careers as either medics or corpsmen. These folks want to help people. Give them an opportunity. And it needs to start, for my DOD colleagues in here, it needs to start while they're still in the service. The only thing that was said to me when I was mustered out was, Doc, if you can't make it on the outside, you can always come back and get shot at with the Marines. Great. Okay? Sorry. My Marines were the most important thing in my life 50 years ago. And veterans are still the most important thing in my life now. Thank you very much, and I don't want to stand in the way of anybody's lunch.